Hey, good Monday morning, everyone. This is Mitch. Hope you guys are having a great start to your day, great start to your work week. I know it's Monday. I know. Not everybody enjoys Monday. I think most of us don't, but hopefully it's a great start to yours. But I got you an update this morning. Of course, we're going to cover what's going to happen weather-wise for today, like we always do in these morning videos. We'll do that in the beginning part of the video, and then the entire last, I would say, almost two-thirds of the video, we'll be talking about what's coming tomorrow and after. We'll break it down like we've kind of been doing in the morning videos over the last 2 or 3 days. There's a lot going on, and today will be somewhat active also, but really Tuesday going forward is going to be nonstop, guys. These videos have been very long, and I'm kind of ready to at least get through each part of this storm coming so we can start to shorten these videos and focus more on what's to come in the future. But what's coming here in the next 24 to 48 hours is very important. And we got some good model information, and I'm going to give you my opinions on some of this stuff too. So we're going to try to figure this out for you guys. There'll be timestamps in the video. I'll put them in the video about 5 minutes after I drop each video. I try to help you guys sort through the areas that you want to specifically watch, which I understand. Not everybody's going to get hit by severe weather, a blizzard, a winter storm in the Northeast, so I completely understand that. But if you guys have not hit the subscribe button, definitely consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. It goes a long way. And more importantly, if you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below so I can pray over it. And I promise you, other people will too in the comments. So let's get rolling here. A lot to talk about. As you can tell, there's about 100 tabs pulled up. So what I want to show you is the water vapor loop. It really shows what's going on very, very well. You see this, kind of bend down here on the western U.S. and California and Nevada. That is our upper trough. There will be a short wave that comes off here and then will spark a blizzard in areas of the northern plains and severe weather for areas of the south central U.S. and a lot of rain, a lot of ice, a lot of snow. And there is going to be a risk of tornadoes in Louisiana and surrounding sections of each state and damaging winds. We need to talk about this. We need to figure it out. And then eventually this low pressure and another one will develop basically off the coast, a coastal low, and have the chance to produce a winter storm for areas of the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, maybe even a big-time icing event for certain areas in the mid-Atlantic. But we need to talk about this. And, of course, the big pattern change that follows behind this that everybody is wondering about and getting excited about before Christmas that could really give us a cold and maybe a wintry Christmas for certain areas of the country. So let's get rolling here. Watches and warnings. The blizzard warnings have expanded. I think last night there was only a handful of counties. Now you got 20, 30 counties in these blizzard warnings now. But look right here. What's interesting is you got ice storm warnings up too in the dark purple. And then the pink is just winter storm warnings. You still got winter storm watches up. They're a little bit unsure of how much snow is going to fall. Then you got these advisories down here. But there's a lot going on. The green or teal color, dark teal color, that is freezing fog advisories. And then you got regular dense fog advisories everywhere else. There's also going to be severe weather in the central plains today. I tell you guys, today's like the kind of the pre-day, the pre-event, the appetizer, and not really a good way coming up. There's a lot going on. One of the most active weather weeks that I've seen so far this year, and that's saying a lot for the entire year. But for today, the Storm Prediction Center, this is new. A slight risk of severe storms in areas of western Kansas, northwest Oklahoma, the panhandle of Oklahoma, and even in the area of the northeast panhandle of Texas. So it's going to be some pretty active weather today, and this will really be mainly driven off tonight. And there'll be a tornado threat. There'll be a 5% risk of a tornado in 25 miles in a given location, where these kinematics really overlap any thermodynamics that are in place, which isn't a whole lot, but there'll be enough there. So some of these storms will be rotating, but will they hit the ground? Let's hope not. Damaging winds, a 15% risk of damaging winds occurring within 25 miles in a given location. That's 50 knots or higher, 55, 60 miles per hour. There will be a small hail threat, but really not a big concern with this. So let's go on and break it down each region to region. And then, like I said, skip ahead. If you're not worried about today, we'll start to break down tomorrow, which will be a big, big day in all weather categories. The southeast today, I think areas that have not seen much sun over the last, I would say, week might see some peaks of it today. I'm talking about the Carolinas and areas of Georgia. But we'll see some shower activity down here in Alabama and Georgia, not a big deal. But really what's coming is these storms overnight that you see starting to enter the picture as we get into daybreak tomorrow. But For today, not very active. Some showers, still dealing with some clouds, but I don't think it'll be as much. Up here in the Northeast, I would love to hear you guys' observations of how much snow you got in southern New England last night. It looks like it was overachieving for areas further east. It looks like Connecticut, Rhode Island, and even eastern areas of Mass got into the fun. In fact, it might be some snow showers still flying around on Long Island, areas of Connecticut. But definitely let me know what y'all saw. Hopefully you're waking up to a nice festive scene this morning. So some people, they might not like that, but some others, it might put you in a good mood for your Monday morning with snow on the Christmas decorations and all that good stuff that I tend to really enjoy but never really get to experience. But for the Northeast today, pretty quiet weather. Enjoy it because it won't be quiet by the end of the work week. But I don't really see any moisture or anything today all the way through the next 24 hours. Very quiet day. South Central U.S., not as quiet at all. The upper trough starts to dig out west. Moisture begins to return. On the low levels, the dew points and actual moisture, like moisture falling from the sky, you're going to have some showers. And then in Oklahoma, and then as we're getting into the overnight hours, we're starting to get literally just before midnight, some storms begin to develop in areas of western Kansas. Some storms down here in the panhandle of Texas and western Oklahoma. These could be severe. They most likely will have a chance to be. The surface low is right here. The low-level jet will probably be screaming right into here as this storm begins to crank up and move into the plains. These will probably be some fast-moving storms, guys. So, like I said, just have a way to get alerts out here because they'll be on your house just like that very quickly. Very fast storm motion out here. And, it's hard to call this an outbreak or anything, but this could be a sneaky event overnight tonight. It's going to be happening when it's going to be dark outside right in the middle of the night. Just watch out for these storms in western Kansas and areas of western Oklahoma and the panhandle of Texas. And then eventually, as we're starting to get closer to daybreak, tomorrow morning, this will get into a cluster of a line of storms here. And then we watch out for damaging winds. And these could be knocking on the doorstep tomorrow of Dallas, probably mid to late morning tomorrow. We'll talk about that here in a second. But the north central U.S., quiet for most of the day. Use today, especially if you're in the Dakotas, Minnesota, western Nebraska. Use today to make the preparations that you guys typically make ahead of big storms like this. Because as soon as we get into this evening, around dinner time, you'll already see the moisture return coming up. And you'll already start to get the freezing drizzle, freezing rain popping up in areas of the Dakotas. And this will put a glaze of ice on everything before the actual snow comes. But here it comes. I mean, getting into the picture overnight tonight, look how quickly this heavy precipitation blossoms in areas of Nebraska. And it's going to get pretty bad overnight tonight. And this is just a huge band. Like I said, some thunder ice, thunder sleet could definitely be in the picture with this. A huge band of heavy precipitation starts to enter that cold air around 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning tonight. And this storm really begins to crank up. But we'll dive into this a little bit deeper here in a second. Temperatures today won't be terrible up here for this time of the year. So it's not going to be miserable making preparations, but of course it's still going to be cold. But for you guys standards up here, probably not too bad, but use today to make preparations for sure, guys. But the deep south still warm again, up into the 60s, maybe some 70s. Enjoy it while you can. Might not last forever, I'll tell you that. And then typical mid-December type temperatures in the Ohio Valley, but definitely cold, especially where you got snow on the ground in the Northeast. A lot of areas might not get above freezing today, including Boston. You'll struggle to get above freezing. But let's move on to the storm system that's on the way, really cranking up tomorrow. We still got the enhanced risk. The good news is this hasn't increased to a moderate risk. There's an enhanced risk for tomorrow. This is starting tomorrow morning until Wednesday morning. So that's a level 3 out of 5. This includes Shreveport, Alexandria, almost to Lufkin, Texas, but there's a lot of small communities in this area. If you're worried about eastern Texas, you definitely need to be concerned, especially early tomorrow afternoon, but we'll get a little bit deeper look at this here in a second. Tornado threat. Right here in the enhanced region, you not only have a 10% risk to see a tornado within 25 miles at any given point, you also have a 10% risk to see a strong tornado, which is an EF2 or higher. So there's a risk for a stronger tornado or two in this region. So please be careful in northern Louisiana, the northern half of Louisiana tomorrow, where the best dynamics will overlap. So let's go on and break this down. And we'll get a closer look at Louisiana too here in a second. So stick with me if this is too broad in for you, if that makes any sense. But as we're getting into tomorrow morning, storms will be knocking on the doorstep of Dallas. They'll already be moving through Tulsa, Oklahoma City. Not too bad up in that region. But as we're getting into about mid-morning, some storms will start to enter the Dallas area. You guys are going to be saved just due to the fact that it's the timing of the day. A lot of the dynamics doesn't have a chance, the parameters, things like that don't have a chance to really build into the region. But as we're getting into about midday, if you're worried if you're up in Little Rock, points north, I think that the severe weather threat is going to be limited. It really is. I don't think you guys have much to worry about, but you are going to have an area of showers and storms that do move through sometime tomorrow afternoon. But this is when you start to be concerned here in far eastern Texas. Some of these storms down here certainly are starting to get that look to it, but as they really move into the maxed out area of northern Louisiana, you watch out for any of these prefrontal storms ahead of this line. This is the latest HRRR model too, which we're in range of. And you watch out for any of these storms that start to get that little kidney bean look to it. I mean, this is starting to get into about 8 p.m. Tomorrow night. Look at this little hook right here. So, we look at the entire duration of the event. There it is. You look at the NAM. The NAM, kind of agrees. It's more of a line of storms, but you start to get some of these prefrontal storms that begin to develop ahead of this main line right here. And then this really gets just kind of broken up as it gets into Louisiana, which isn't a good thing. You want this to just stay a line of storms. No prefrontal storms ahead of this, meaning storms that fire up ahead of the main line. Let's take a closer look at this because I know a lot of people are probably struggling to see that. But a closer look, Louisiana, eastern Texas, southern Arkansas, and most of Mississippi right here. But as we're getting here in time, we'll stop this right here. This is around midday tomorrow, around lunchtime, around is what I mean by midday. Storms beginning to enter the picture here in northeast Texas, eastern Texas. Nothing too bad right now, but as we're getting into, I would say, 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon tomorrow, Shreveport, these storms will be knocking on the door of you. You just, like I said, it doesn't look like a discrete storm mode, which is good. But within this line of storms, as we're getting into tomorrow afternoon, there could be some kinks in the line, meaning some embedded rotation that could drop a quick tornado. And I would argue that sometimes this is a worse situation just because a lot of times you can't see it. It happens very quickly, and a lot of times you just can't visibly see what's going on. But moving forward here, look at this. You see you got these little kinks in this line right here. This could be dangerous in far eastern Texas too. If the further west you get in Texas, the more the severe threat goes down. This really gets going tomorrow afternoon, and really you're saved by just the timing of the day that this energy moves through. But like I said, you'll stop it right here. This is for tomorrow evening when the sun starts to go down. You got these little storms that have that little hook to them right here. That's the storms you got to watch out for. And then we keep going. The sun's well down. This is just before midnight. And that it still just looks dangerous out here. You got these little hooks, but I think the reason the severe threat does not increase is just because this looks like a semi-discrete mode or just a cluster, a line of storms that just have embedded spin-ups in it. But there will be a period tomorrow evening into the overnight hours that we need to watch out for these storms, guys. We really do. The NAM, if we were to keep going, because there is a severe weather threat also that I have not mentioned, for tomorrow, there's a slight risk for Wednesday, for the Gulf Coast line down here in this yellow area. So we'll be able to look a closer look at that tomorrow. But as far as what the NAM shows, has this line somewhat holding on for dear life as we're getting into tomorrow. I'm sorry, I keep saying tomorrow. As we're getting into Wednesday morning, into Wednesday afternoon. But we'll see what happens as we get later in the afternoon Wednesday. If anything can really get going in this area, let's hope it does not. So for the blizzard up here, we can look at the HRRR model. It goes 48 hours out, but it really shows the intensity of the moisture as we're moving through here. Look how intense this moisture is right here. In fact, let's just, let's look at this one right here. I feel like this is a better view. The moisture looks, not only, what I'm trying to say is, as we're getting into late this evening for the Dakotas, not only does, you see freezing rain on here. This is going to be some heavier freezing rain. Some sleet will be mixed in with this. And this is just the beginning of the event. And as we get into the middle of the night tonight, the snow really begins to blossom. The moisture begins to really get juiced up, meaning a lot of heavy precipitation begins to develop with the approach of this surface low, and it's deepening somewhat. So look at all this moisture getting tossed into this cold air dome sitting right here. So a lot of heavy snow begins to break out over western Nebraska, areas of Wyoming, Colorado. And then as this surface low begins to approach, the winds begin to pick up big time. A lot of freezing rain falling up here in the western Dakotas. But look at this area of precipitation moving into this cold air. I mean, when I tell you, for you folks in the wee hours of the morning, I'm talking about 2 to 5 o'clock in the morning, if you're in western South Dakota, areas of deep in, eastern South Dakota, areas in southwest Minnesota, this precipitation is going to start off with a bang, meaning you're going to go from just cloudy skies in the middle of the night to you could get just blasted by sleet, freezing rain, and snow just all of a sudden. It almost looks like a line of storms, but with frozen precipitation, guys. And this comes in. We're getting into daybreak tomorrow, Tuesday morning. Heavy snow still falling in these areas. This is for Tuesday morning. A lot of heavy snow getting all the way up into North Dakota, but really it's South Dakota and western South Dakota and Nebraska getting absolutely slammed as this surface low brings warm, moist air with it. But the warm air to the surface keeps it all raining in this area. But we keep this going. And, I mean, even in Minneapolis, around midday, late morning tomorrow, I mean, it could start off as an area of brief snow and then switch to sleet and then maybe freezing rain. A tough call for Minneapolis, but there could be some kind of ice storm in this area. But we get into Tuesday evening. Look at all this heavy snow into these areas. I mean, from western Nebraska, eastern Wyoming, all the way to central and northern sections of Minnesota. And this keeps going. We go 48 hours out. We'll stop it right here. Surface low right here. Enough cold air getting wrapped in all the way to the low pressure where everything is snow at this point. But there's going to be a mean dry slot somewhere in here where somebody might be forecasting a lot of winter precipitation, but might not get a lot just due to a dry slot. And those are very, very, very difficult to predict. But I can tell you, you back it up here and you look at the winds from this event. Let's look at wind gusts from this event. And really when this storm begins to crank up tomorrow morning, it is pouring snow down here in southwest areas of South Dakota and western Nebraska, and the winds are gusting to 40 to 50, maybe as much as 60 miles per hour. This also includes eastern areas of Wyoming and then areas of Colorado. Also, a lot of heavy, strong winds are into this area, getting blasted. That's why you had the blizzard warnings. It is still snowing. Winds pushing 50, 60, 70 miles per hour. Wind gusts, not consistent. But, I mean, even an area, when this band comes through this area of Minnesota, it's going to be accompanied with some strong winds. I mean, this is for Tuesday evening, tomorrow evening, and afternoon for Minneapolis. You got winds pushing 30, 40, almost 45 miles per hour gusts. So that's why you got the blizzard. A lot of strong winds with this. As far as how much snow can fall, this is from the National Weather Service. Over the entire duration of the events, 2 feet of snow, I think, is going to be an area you need to watch here. Right along the South Dakota-Nebraska state line, right in this area, but widespread foot and a half totals are to be expected with this. But there's going to be a sharp cutoff. It's going to be a mean dry slot right into here. And then there's also going to be a threat of ice. There's going to be a corridor of ice. That's why you got ice storm warnings here. Somebody could pick up a half inch of ice, which I know you're thinking a half inch of anything don't sound like a lot. But when it comes to freezing rain, a half inch is ice storm criteria by a long shot. That's when you start to get trees, small trees potentially falling from the weight of ice on them, roads become impassable. A quarter of inch of ice does that alone, but a half an inch of ice is when you start to get the destructive ice. And there's going to be a nasty area of ice, even, as far south as northwest Iowa, southeast areas of Minnesota, southwest areas of Minnesota, always getting my directional mixed up. And then eastern areas of South Dakota could see a lot of ice, guys. So this is something a lot of people aren't talking about. It normally gets, overshadowed by the snow, but please be careful with this. So let's talk about the potential winter storm for the Northeast. We're not going to stay long on this, but because a lot hasn't changed over the last 24 to 36 hours. But I can tell you we still need to watch out for ice starting as early as Thursday morning along the eastern spine of the Alps all the way potentially down to Boone as a little bit of a cold air damming sets up. The European has been very consistent on this happening, and we need to be careful. A lot of ice potential with this. That I feel like I know I've said it 100 times, just isn't getting talked about a lot. But I mean, ice is trending higher for areas of western Maryland, far eastern sections of West Virginia, and western areas of Virginia. And we could get an area of ice that moves into Pennsylvania before maybe it changes to snow. But the latest Euro wants to hit Pennsylvania pretty hard with snow again. This is getting into Thursday evening. Remember, if you ever get confused about the timing, just look up here. And because that's one thing I'm trying to get better at, guys, is mentioning the timing in these videos. Sometimes I get really bad at this. Trust me, if I took the time to actually put a timestamp and customize these videos would probably take twice as long. And I'll be honest, I just don't have all the time in the world for that. Maybe if I can do it full time, I can work on cool stuff like that. But in the meantime, look up here, and this gives you a general idea where we're at. But we're getting into overnight Thursday, into the middle of the night, Thursday night into Friday. Looks like a substantial snowstorm, and it's still snowing over here for areas of the north central U.S. Pretty wild. But the low pressure, and I think it's because you just have such intense blocking up here, is pushing this inland. Notice you got the L right here, right over the Delmarva area. And that is not a favorable track for snow from Washington, D.C. to Boston, the I-95 corridor, the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. Therefore, the low pressure brings a lot of warm air to the surface, meaning you guys stay rain for the I-95 corridor, and it looks like just a major snowstorm for areas of the Northeast. But this still has a little bit of time to change. You know, rain might change the snow for Boston at the tail end of the system as we get into Saturday of this coming weekend. But what happens after that? It's a big question. But as far as snow, the blend of all models, like I said, from Washington, D.C. to Boston, not showing much at all. But just inland, this is a big hitter right here. But we'll see what happens. We got time to watch. If you're a big snow fan and live in those areas I just mentioned, this certainly doesn't look like your storm. It did probably about 2 or 3 days ago, potentially. But now it looks like this is going to be a big hitter for the interior Northeast. But things could change. It can. We got this system that, you know, there's a lot of model data and ingredients in the atmosphere that has to be sampled to really figure out what's going to go on. One thing that the GFS is even trended towards, which I didn't show for this system, is a lot of ice, guys. I'm telling you, for eastern West Virginia, the far western few counties and areas of Maryland, and then the spine of the Virginia mountains here. Listen, I'm telling you, there could be an ice storm here. I would not be surprised if some ice storm warnings get issued in this area. And this ice will fall Thursday morning, maybe all the way for the next 24 hours after that. So please be mindful of this that could potentially be coming. I feel like it's not being mentioned enough. Let's talk about the pattern change. Overnight, models remained consistent. So this system right here, this is coming into the central to eastern U.S. It's bringing cold air. Trough digs into the eastern U.S. Kind of knocks us into a below average temperature time frame. At the same time, you got what we call a negative EPO, East Pacific Oscillation. When you have ridging into Alaska, it warms Alaska up. Normally, sometimes dislodges cold air. We call it a cross-polar flow from the Polar Express, if you will, from the Arctic. And at the same time, you have still got that negative NAO up here blocking up towards Greenland. This dislodges cold air into the lower 48, and in this case, for everybody. So we're getting into this weekend, cold air setting up. But one thing I'm watching on the latest models is around the 20th time frame, briefly warms up before the cold air really, really doubles down right before Christmas. The GEFS shows this, the EPS, the ensembles, the operational run show this too. So I won't be surprised if cold air drops down, warms up for literally a day or two, and then it doubles down on the cold. And, we're about 10 days out at this point, and you can't ask for a better looking pattern than this on the EPS ensembles, one of the most reliable model suites out there. Troughing in the eastern and central U.S., ridging in the west. We call this a positive PNA. It's when the west is above average and basically the east is below average. Storm track gets shunted south, cold air on top. We could have some magic just before Christmas. So we're watching this pattern. This pattern continues all the way through Christmas and even after Christmas. 8 to 14 day range from yesterday. This takes us to the 19th to the 25th. Below average temperatures might dominate the entire lower 48 leading up to Christmas, guys. Very impressive. You take a look at some model guidance here, the European, after this storm system moves through, do we see some kind of system get flirted with this cold air? But here he goes. Look at the 19th to the 20th time frame right in here. Looks like the ridge tries to briefly flex. This amplifies our storm system. Might have an inland tracker, but behind it, a dislodgement of cold air might filter in. We certainly need to watch this, and the nasty cold air breaks out a few days before Christmas. And when you see these lines kind of jumbled up together like this, these blue lines, you know a cold air mass is dumping into the lower 48. And this is really when we need to watch any kind of storm systems. The GFS kind of shows the same thing. In fact, let's just look at the latest one. Here we go. Let's switch to the eastern U.S. and then we'll wrap this video up. So this is the latest GFS that just came out. We get rid of this system right here. Then we get into this weekend. Cold air settles in. Look how close this system is down here for the, we got Gulf moisture way down here in the Gulf. Cold air nearby, but they don't connect. As we get into later this coming weekend, this passes through. Here comes another system. Looks kind of amplified, right? Low pressure right down here. It gets almost sheared off. You got a piece of energy up here, piece of energy up here, but you can already see cold air beginning to push into the plains. What does this system do down here? Well, it gets kind of suppressed south and doesn't really do anything. And then we just got to watch for any cold air pushes going forward. But I could tell you the latest GFS run doesn't look very cold. So we're still flip-flopping a little bit. And in fact, we're probably flip-flopping more right now than probably what we did 24 hours ago. So we need to certainly see what's going on, if there's any kind of changes, things like that. But we're certainly watching this system. Weird pattern. And I think that the models are just having a hard time past this storm system coming in late this week. So we're going to figure this out for you. That's all I got, guys. God bless all y'all. Have yourselves a great day, and I'll be with y'all tonight.